All right, here we are with another sales chat. This is hashtag sales chats. That's SalesChats. If you want to join us on, Twitter and get involved in this conversation, because today, me here, John Golden in San Diego as usual, hosting this event. Martha, my colleague in Vienna, give us a wave, Martha. There you go, and that's Vienna.
Hi, guys.
Austria in Europe, not Vienna on the east coast of the US where I used to live, different Vienna altogether. And I'm joined by Bill Carmody, who is in New York. So we have San Diego on the west coast, we have Bill Carmody in New York on the east coast. We have Martha a little further east of Bill over in Austria, Vienna. And Bill is author, coach, digital marketing expert, and all-round inspiration. So how's that for intro?
That sounds great,
Bill?
John. I like that intro.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's great.
Yeah, excellent. And what we're going to talk about today is mental fitness for sales leaders, the X factor for crushing your sales target. And let's start off, Bill. I mean, let's be honest. This whole period right now in this year has probably tested the mental fitness of pretty much everybody, and sales leaders in particular, because probably in a lot of organizations, you know, they maybe have struggled a little, maybe their core target markets are struggling and all of that. And guess who always gets all of the stuff just piled on their head? It's the sales leader, right? They're getting grief from above, they're getting grief from below, and they're like, why am I even in this job to begin with? So let's baseline it for a minute. Like, what would be your first piece of advice to sales leaders to get themselves in a good mental space to be able to not just deal, but thrive?
Yeah. Well, let me do this, if you wouldn't mind. Let me just define when we say mental fitness, because I think that's a good definition that will help us go right to your question, which is mental fitness is your capacity to respond to life's challenges with positive rather than a negative mindset. It impacts your peak performance, your peace of mind, your wellness, and your healthy relationships. And the reason I share that is because we all have some degree of mental fitness, right? And we have this idea there. And under challenging times, we get tested. So think about physical fitness. You know, if you barely ever go to the gym, you hardly ever work out, and suddenly you decide to climb Mount Everest, you're screwed. You're totally screwed because you have not been prepared for this in a Herculean effort. Same thing with mental fitness. You know, if you are not mentally strong, you come up against some of the most Herculean challenges. I mean, we're in a pandemic, for Christ's sakes, right? Of course, you're going to get hijacked. You're going to experience all of your saboteurs, all your negative emotions. And then that's only going to make things worse, which then compounds the problems. So really, the reason we're talking about this X factor is that I truly believe, having been on the sales side for 25 years, I know the distinctions and exactly what salespeople are going through right now in this moment. And if you can shift your mindset from a negative to a positive one, you're going to be in that small percentage of people who have found a way forward despite all the circumstances. And that will put you head and shoulders above everybody else.
Yeah, no, I love that, Bill. That's a great synopsis there, and I think it's important for people to also remember, as usual, is that, you know, you can't control the external circumstances around you, but you can certainly control how you react to them and what you do. So let's talk about what are some of the ways, okay, if you can get people to shift to a positive mindset, what are the ways you can actually do that? Because sometimes people will say, yeah, it's easy to say that, but it's a lot more difficult to actually execute it because you have these little devils on your shoulder constantly rabbiting in your ear.
I'll tell you what, let's give your audience this in 1 minute. Give them 1 minute and actually drop into their body, feel the full experience of what we're talking about. How's that sound? 1 minute.
That sounds awesome.
All right. So for those who can see, I'm going to show, and then if those who are just listening will basically say the same. So I want everyone to take their hands like this, right? And I want to take the fingers in the palm of one hand and go up and down the fingers in the palm of the other hand, just like that. This is called a PQ rep. And as you're doing this, bring all your attention to the physical sensations in each of your fingers and your palm. Let go of any thoughts that may be coming up and bring all your fine attention to the feeling of touch. And as you're doing this, notice what's happening in your body. Notice what's happening in your mind. And if you start having other thoughts, bring it right back down to the
Motion
feel of your touch.
detected at your front door.
And keep going back and forth. And notice what's happening right now. I'm going to stop, but you can keep going to show you how easy it is to drop back into your body. What happens is when we get activated with negative self-talk, our mind chatter starts going off. We call it the Buddhists call it the monkey mind, right? We use and typically that mind chatter is not there to help you. It's there to protect you. If you go back to 10,000 years, like our limbic system was created as a way to protect us. If there was a rustling in the bushes, we would like be scared and jump away because that would basically help us with our survival. But now our fears, uncertainties, and doubts, they all come up in the most inappropriate moments. We're not going to get eaten by a lion anymore, but our brains are still hardwired that the slightest negativity is going to activate all of our senses. But what we just did was we calmed down and we dropped into our body. And in that moment, you have clarity again. And in that moment, I can say, okay, what's really going on here? Not from a place of bad or wrong, but blameless discernment. What do I need to do right now in this moment to change my outcome? From a sales perspective, this is the key. Because I go onto a phone call and someone hangs up on me. I call somebody else, they tell me I'm an idiot. I talk to somebody else, they hate me, whatever it is. And I take it personally. Yeah. And I start feeling judged. And that judgment activates all my saboteur thoughts. And then I'm in a downward spiral. I'm in my slump. My boss comes in and says, you haven't hit your numbers. And I take it personally. I go home. Your wife says, how was your day today, honey? I did terrible. I'm back in my negativity. And it just reinforces. I turn on the news. I don't like what I see. I pick up the paper. I don't like what I see, right? Where's the positivity coming from? It's not external. So we have to give it to ourselves. Yeah. And so then I go one step further and say, what is the gift in this moment? Now that's a hard one because you're like, whoa, we're in a pandemic. We're likely to be in one for at least another year. Like if you really look at the history of pandemics, they don't go away as fast as everyone wants them to. They typically are 18 to 24 months. So if I'm living in that reality, I need to figure out how I create positivity for myself because I'm sure as hell not getting it from my surroundings.
Yeah, listen, Bill, I think that was fantastic and a great exercise. I mean, I think that people should relook at this and redo that exercise. I think it's a fantastic one. Reminds me of some of the, I'm big into martial arts. Reminds me of some of the moving meditations. Are you really? That we do. Oh yeah, huge.
I'm a 4th degree black belt, just about to test for 5th degree. If it was open, I'd be in Korea this month testing for my 5th degree black belt for Subak Kwan. That's awesome. I didn't know we had that.
No, I'm 3rd degree and hopefully test for my 4th maybe in a year or so. So yeah. So that's just what reminded me of some of the movie meditations or whatever. But I think back to your point again, it's about taking control yourself, and as you said, getting back in touch with yourself, because there's so much out there to derail us. And I love the fact that you mentioned the news, because I mean I would say to people, like, you got to remember today's news is not there to inform, it's there to provoke. And if you're going to let all of these things into your mind and stuff, you're going to end up not in a good place when you need to focus, as you say, on your job, on sales, on doing all those other things, that there's enough variables in that without adding in a bunch of negative, like, external forces.
Well, and it would be good enough to just have that experience for yourself. But what's really great is all of this is based on 500,000 participants in a research study started at Stanford University. And the results are phenomenal. So what we just did was so simple, but when sales leaders do this, there's so many great data points. And I'll point you to positiveintelligence.com/program to see all this in writing, but I'll give you the highlights. Like at L'Oreal, these strengthened competencies resulted in $91,000 in increased sales per person. There was at MetLife, they trained their salespeople and they outsold the control group by 37%. Motorola recorded improved productivity by 93% of trained employees. And it goes on and on and on. The statistics are mind-boggling. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is because a lot of people are out there going, this is all touchy-feely, I don't care about any of it, right? And that's what I thought. When I first heard this stuff, I'm like, mindfulness, seriously? Are we talking about, come on. And yet this has been profound for me. And before we started this program, I told you that I had the most successful year of my life this last year, the most successful on every domain, the most revenue I've ever made, the most incredible connections and relationships that I've ever had. I've had like deeper family connections than anything. And I tell you this partly because it's the choices that I've made mentally. My mental fitness has gone up. So I am not in reaction to what's going on around me. I'm not being discouraged by the people saying no. In fact, I'm encouraged by the people who really want my support and help. And I'm using that positivity to drive me. And so I'm seeing these results for myself directly, which is why I wanted to come on your show and talk about this. Because I think it's one of those things where we all look about like process, accountability, statistics, measurement, data-driven stuff. It's great. I love it. And if you don't have a positive mindset, none of that stuff's going to matter because you're going to keep looking for the evidence of why you're not doing it well.
Yeah, and I think that's such a fantastic point there, Bill. Just at the end, what you just said is that if you have a negative mindset, or if you will find evidence everywhere to prove yourself right. You will exactly. Find evidence, and that's why you have to start with your own mindset first. And I think also that people need to understand, like, the mind-body connection, because if during this time, if you've got a lot of ailments, maybe you got back pain, maybe you got all of these other things, and maybe they're getting worse right now. Yeah. You also have to look at, that's your mind distracting you.
Yes.
From, and it thinks it's doing you a favor. It's distracting you from all these negative thoughts that are coming in, and it's transferring it to somewhere else. So there's a lot of things that positivity and shifting your mindset will do for you. Not just from a mindset point of view, but from a physical and health point of view.
But see, this is where things got really interesting for me, John, because as a martial artist like you, I've been practicing meditation for years, and I meditate in the morning every morning. And when I came across this work, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense to me, because if this really mattered, I would have already had it because of my mental fitness relative to my meditation. But it's not true, because the meditation is in the places where I control. I control my environment. I'm controlling everything when I'm meditating. The ability to make this shift in the moment is what was profound. The ability to see a customer who's yelling at me as a child who has childlike innocence, and they're just upset. And I see past the anger. I see past the upsettedness, and look at, like, what is this individual innocent being really asking of me? And if I can get past the way in which they're delivering their communication and get to the heart of what their real pain point is, I can shift them in the moment, because I'm shifted. I'm not activated based on being, oh my God, they're attacking me and I got to get off the phone or whatever. I'm now fully present and seeing what's available. And in that moment, I can see something I wouldn't have seen. And even those frustrating moments, I can shift myself and therefore shift my prospect to actually turn a possible loss into a win. And it's profound.
Yeah, and Bill, I love that, because there's a couple of things there that I just want to focus in on and maybe talk a little bit more about. Number one, it's recognizing our triggers, because what you said there is, maybe if somebody if somebody reacts badly to you, whatever, in a certain way, that may trigger something in you. And if you don't recognize what triggers you, then it could completely derail you. And the other part is being present. And I think that's such a critical thing to underline, like 500 times, is when you're triggered or when you're reacting to something, you're out of the moment. You're not present. You're not present in that moment anymore. You're somewhere else.
And John, it gets worse, right? Because it becomes a cycle. And what I mean by that is, an event happens, like a client yells at me. And then what happens? I make up a story about it. I start talking about why I'm no good or bad. And then what does that do? It anchors me in the past. And now, as I'm anchored in the past, I predict my future based on my past, not being present at all. And then I go into auto reaction. And so the next time I have that event, it happens again, and it strengthens and strengthens and strengthens and strengthens until in that moment, I just know I'm no good. I just say, like, it doesn't even matter. Why don't I even pick up the phone? Because when I do, they're just going to tell me that I'm no good, and that that what I'm offering doesn't make any sense. Like, I start buying into this nonsensical story that I made up, and I forgot that I made it up. Right?
Absolutely, and that's why I think it's so critical that people start to be conscious of what triggers in them and how they're feeling. And to your point is, I mean, now with now with a lot of people doing virtual, in some degrees, it's gotten worse for some people, because now they're imagining, or they're filling in the gaps that they can't see or hear, the things that normally if they were sitting face to face, maybe they wouldn't. And so they're creating even more negativity surrounding the situation when it probably isn't there at all.
Yeah. And it's so true, because the stories we make up, then we reinforce and find evidence for.
Mm-hmm.
And so the opposite is also true, that when I'm noticing that I'm feeling this feeling of negativity, I can stop. I can do that PQ rep that we just did. We just do any version of that. There's breathing versions, there's tension relaxation, there's walking, there's focus, there's listening. Every one of my senses, I can activate any of them. So there's so many ways to access it. And then from that moment, I can be present again, and then make a choice. And I can choose from a place of presence and focus, as opposed to being in reaction. That makes all the difference, because now I can see what I'm not see. When I'm in a story, I'm in my head. I'm thinking about all the reasons why this isn't going to work. And then I prove myself right. When I let go of all that and I'm focused and I'm looking at what's really present in the moment, I can be curious. And if there's a part of this, I can start to explore, well, what does that really mean? And I can start to be authentic and empathetic about what my customer is going through. And then say, like, look, forget the sale entirely. What can I do to help them right now in this moment? Because guess what? When they realize that you're more there about them and their outcomes and their results than you are about making a quick buck, then they've got your full attention. They're like, oh, you know what? Here, let's talk then. Like, I realize that this is more important. And there's the distinction. One of the things in this time in our history is that everyone has their guard up. They have their guard up because they don't want to be sold. And yet everybody likes to buy. What a great, interesting insight. We all like to buy, but no one wants to be sold. So we have to give them the opportunity to let that guard down so that they're not feeling defensive. And if they're feeling defensive, I can't sell you anything. It will never work. However, if I create a safe space where we can talk about what's really going on in this moment, then I may actually have something that could support you. And in that moment, I give you an opportunity to buy, not sell. And it becomes a whole shift. And that's all in the ways of being. That's being present. It's not a script. It's not a technique. It's not an email function. You know what I mean? Like, this is about being genuine, present, and authentic. What a relief that I don't have to be something I'm not. Wow.
Yeah. And it's not all about me either. I mean, and I think that's the other thing, is when you stop making it all about you, all about yourself, and you start focusing outwards, as you said, if you start focusing on the prospect or the customer, or the person you're working with, rather than looking for the evidence to prove that somehow I'm talking to Bill, but somehow Bill isn't going to like what I'm going to say. Bill isn't going to like my product. Bill is going to, at some stage, I'm going to say something dumb and Bill's just going to hang up on me. If I stop thinking all about me and start focusing on you, then the dynamic changes.
Totally. And so that is about being audience centered. When I do a keynote speech, it's the same thing, right? I'm focusing 100% on my audience. How many sales executives get asked to speak and they don't want to because they fear public speaking? Or their team is asking them to step up and give them a rally cry, help them sort of think differently about what they're going through. And they don't do it, not because they're not great speakers, but because they fear what it's like to be in that vulnerable space. So instead, what I always look at is, how can I make this about my audience, my team, the people I'm speaking to? Like right now in this moment, some people are listening to this like, I could never get on a podcast and have this conversation. It would just, no, and terrified, because they're thinking about them, how they would feel. But if I look at you, John, and I say, look, if I can add value to even one listener today, one listener, I've made an impact. So if I'm doing any of this, if I'm sharing what I'm learning and it helps one person get into a place of positivity and stop being negative, we win. This was worth it. This was worth the time. So now I'm making it about the audience, and I don't care what you think about me. And I don't mean it from a place of it doesn't matter. I mean, it's like, I'm not in my head where I'm going to be dead. I'm focusing on my audience where I can add value. And that is a winning strategy across the board.
Yeah. Well, all I can say to you is I've already taken a lot away from what you've said, Bill. So you've made an impact on at least one person that we're absolutely sure of. But I love what you're saying is because I think I think, as we said, sales leaders under a lot of pressure right now. It's very easy for them to be self-focused and sort of, oh my goodness, I've got the people above me, the people below me, the people at the sides of me, everybody's on me. But now, to your point, is what we really need from them is to start looking outwards and saying, okay, how can I help the people around me, and how can I help them help the people they're talking to, and how can I help them get into a much more positive space? And I think when you help other people get into positive space, it even accentuates your own positive feelings.
Yes. Yes, and it's contagious. I mean, to me, this is the part we often overlook in the context of sales, is that we know, like, statistically, that it's easier to help someone buy a second time than it is to buy the first time. We know that, right? All the data shows that. And yet, here's how many people are actually going out of their way to connect with their existing clients and have a conversation about what's going on for them right now and how it can be of service, not from a place of selling anything. And I know that sounds a bit paradoxical when you're talking about a sales conversation, but ultimately what it comes down to is the authenticity of actually caring, actually being authentically curious about what's going on for them in this moment, and being there as a space of positivity when where else are they getting it? They're getting it nowhere else. And if you can be that space, guess what? They want to take your call next time. They want to have a conversation with you. In fact, they know someone who could really use your uplifting insights, and they're going to make a recommendation and referral. To me, that's the missing piece in so much of what we do. The purpose of today's business is not to get clients. It's to create raving fans that get you clients. Like, I don't want to go out there and sort of pound the pavement and help everybody, like, hope they buy from me. I want to create such a raving fan base that they can't shut up about me, and they're making so many referrals that all I can do is take the inbound requests that are coming through. That's why I've had the most successful year of my life, because when everybody else is drowning in negativity, they've got this really ridiculous positive light coming from me that whoever comes in contact with me goes, what is going on right now? And there's a shift for them, and my positivity shifts them in their thinking, and they have a better day, they have a better week, they have a better month, their family notices it, they have conversations about it, and that goes viral. Who is this guy, Bill Carmody? I want to know who this person is. Let me introduce you to him, right? That's the shift. And now I don't have to pound the phones. I don't have to hit you up with 17 emails to get you to click on one reply. Like, I don't need to do any of that, because my reputation precedes me.
And I think that's a beautiful thing, Bill, to be perfectly honest, because I do think you're right, and it stands out in this particular environment, but it stands out anyway because, let's face it, the pervasive culture we live in today is so negative, and everything, it's either it's social media with comparison culture and everybody jealous of everybody else and trying to show, oh look, my life is better than yours, even though it's not really. Yeah. And then you have all this, and let's not even talk about media and politics and all of that kind of stuff. But I think people are craving a light that you just talked about, that shining light of positivity, and they don't know where to find it. So if you can be that light, you're going to be such a contrast.
I mean, you just nailed it, John. That is why I'm such a big fan of mental fitness. When I came across Shirzad Shamin's work in positive intelligence, it started in 2012. This book is not a new book. 2012, he became a New York Times bestselling author with the book Positive Intelligence. I came across it, I read it, I'm like, this is interesting. But then I did a 6-week program and I was shifted. I realized in just 6 weeks how quickly I could make this shift for myself. And it was just the beginning. And it's like going to the gym. The more you go, the more you practice this, the more you do this work, the better you become at it. And suddenly you realize it's no longer even about you. It's about all the people in your life you get to impact. Like being able to connect with my wife in a different way, being able to connect with my kids in a different way, being able to help my friends when my friends are going through divorces right now. Why? I mean, this is such a hard time when we're all forced to be at home most of the time. It's like most people's marriages were not designed for that. Family Guy, Lois said on the recent episode, it's like, Peter, if our marriage is going to make it, you need to be away for us most of the time, And it's like, that felt so true in this time of COVID. It's like, we want to be able to go out, do our thing, come back, and have this. And now we're on top of each other. And if we don't have a place of positivity, that's not going to work. So for us, it really comes down to how can we be in that space where we can be self-cleaning ovens for ourselves, fix ourselves, clean up whatever mess we're going through. Because if I'm in this place of negativity with my wife, I'm enrolling her in my negativity. If I'm in this place of negativity with my kids, I'm enrolling them in my negativity. And the reverse is also true. So
yeah,
yeah.
I love that. I love that idea about enrolling other people in your negativity. I mean, just and the opposite, obviously, enrolling them in your positivity. But I think that's a great point for people just to focus in on the fact as our actions are not in isolation.
Yeah.
The things we do not happen in isolation. We are involving other people, whether we think we are or not.
And that's exactly it, John. Now think about that even in the context of just sales. Let's bring right back there.
Mm-hmm.
I have one negative call. Now that's rubbing off on my next one, which makes it less likely to be successful. So now I have 2 negative calls. And now the next one goes to the third one. And now I've got 3. Like you see a pattern, negative, negative, negative. If I'm not correcting this on my own, if I'm not shifting myself, bringing me back to positivity, seeing exactly what the possibilities are, getting excited that every single one of these no's is getting me closer to yes. If I don't reframe what I'm experiencing, it is a domino effect. Negative, 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 negative. How can I possibly be successful in sales? It just doesn't work. So the opposite is true. I have a negative experience, I reset. I do some PQ reps, I'm back to where I was, I'm back to neutral. Do it again, have another negative experience, reset myself. Now, every time I'm doing it, I'm fully present to what is. I'm not connecting it to what was. And so from that perspective, it's fresh every time, and I have a much higher probability of making the sale in that moment.
Yeah, and I love that idea though about it's not what was, it's what is right now. Because yes, we tend to carry that baggage. Every call, every interaction, we pack another bag and we throw it on our shoulder to carry into the next one, and before you know it, we're laden down like some Sherpa, and barely able to move. And I think it's so incredibly important what you just said there about letting that go and moving steadily along.
It's awesome. And John, I think if we could just do that for people, if we could do that for ourselves and be in that place of letting go of all that baggage, then we're free. And it really feels that way too. It's like you talk about the analogy of the Sherpa with all the heavy baggage, but negative emotions feel heavy. They really are. Your anger, you're upset, you're depressed, all of those negative emotions weigh us down. And if we can just clear them, then we're back to neutral, and neutral feels light in comparison. And if you can then keep going and be happy, now it's like you're like floating. Like, you ever been in that space? Like when you first fall in love, you're floating. You're like, just your feet don't even touch the ground. That's what we want to be. If we're in that space, we can do anything. And we do.
Absolutely. Listen, this has been fantastic, Bill. What we always like to do before we finish up is ask you to give a power tip, a personal power tip, something that you do to set yourself up for success.
You don't think we've been doing this the whole time?
No, I know we have. That's what I'm saying. An additional power tip.
Yeah. So it really is this idea of before I do anything on a sales context, I am making sure I'm checking with myself. So we call that a PQ rep, but essentially I am looking in and saying, am I positive or am I negative right now in this moment? Because if I connect to who and how I'm feeling and I experience my experience, now I can be fully present to what is. And if I'm experiencing negative emotions, why would I try to force myself onto the next sales initiative? It doesn't make any sense. Clear myself and then go on. So for me, the power tip is be a self-cleaning oven. Clean up whatever negativity is in your space before you take on anything else. Otherwise, you're just going to replicate that continuous negative self-talk that will only lead you to one inevitable conclusion, which is failure. The reverse is also true. Go into positivity. Keep going into positivity. You will enlighten yourself in such a way that you are enrolling. People want to buy from you because they like being with you. And that self-cleaning oven is the most powerful thing I can share with you. Do your PQ reps, be in that space of presence, you're there.
Yeah, listen, that's fantastic, Bill. And there you go. It's a choice. What have you got to lose? What have you got to lose, seriously, by choosing to do what Bill just said and to choose the positive route? Listen, Bill, this has been fantastic. Before you go, please do tell people a little bit more about yourself and how they can learn more.
Yeah, if anyone really wants to go deeper in this work, you can reach out to me, billcarmody.com/coaching. I give away a free 1-hour coaching session for anyone who would like to really go deep in this specific context for helping you in your sales process. There's another thing too, that I just published a best-selling book called The 3 Rules of Marriage, which you think, hey, what's that about relative to sales? Actually, 3rulesofmarriage.com, it's actually how you actually have powerful relationships. It starts with your primary relationship, but affects everybody you touch. So there's a free workbook, first 2 free chapters, 3rulesofmarriage.com, and I would love to be of service to your audience. Thank you, John.
Yeah. Listen, that's fantastic. And I'd say a very timely and much needed book. I'm sure everybody should check it out. Well, listen, thanks Martha, how are we doing on the Twitter chat today? Good activity?
Everyone is so motivated right now. So stay positive.
Yeah, great. Well, Bill, hopefully we have actually lit up Twitter with some positivity, because God knows there's enough negativity on it. So maybe we've made a dent in there. Maybe there's just that glimmer of light shining through the Twitter sphere right now.
Love it.
Yeah, my name is John Golden, SalesPOP Online Sales Magazine. Martha, my colleague in Vienna, and Bill in New York. Listen, this has been fantastic. The time has flown. I know we could go on forever. But I think everybody get out there, make a choice, be positive today, do what Bill, do that exercise that Bill showed at the beginning. And like I said, what have you got to lose? Take a chance. Go for it.
Thanks, John.
Bye now.